Good. Okay, we're going to start today with a moment of silence followed by the pledge. Thank you. Margaret, you take the call. Roll, please.
Anthony Dorsey,
Here.
Tony Cinto, John Foreman,
Here.
Ann Sather,
Here.
Kevin Shively,
Here.
Nikki Satin, here, Richard Wolf,
Here.
and Mary Isaac. Here. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. So the first on the agenda today, do we have anyone from elections? Board of Elections? No? Okay. They have time on Thursday as well.
Yeah, I think we had them. They had them on both. So,
Yeah.
and probably like either or.
There was an option either way. And I think the same for finance. So, okay. Good. So let's start off public safety, Chief Lombardo.
Good evening. There you go. Yes, thank you. It's a traffic light, yeah.
So for our reference, in the blue book, it starts on page 163. That's where the org chart is.
It's on page 7 of the worksheet.
Okay. Chief, did you want to start off by just giving a high-level overview of budgets, of your budget?
Sure, currently, I think the biggest thing that we talk about on a regular basis at work, and I'm sure the boards track it as well, is our current expenditures for overtime. As you know, the last few years, they've been up because of our shortage in personnel. And we don't expect much different this year by the end of this fiscal year and probably next year. And I was going to talk a little bit about our hiring and staffing levels because I'm sure that's on everybody's mind because that's what drives this account. Yes, since the defined benefit pension has been reinstated, and even before that, we started to hire a couple of people. So we have 4 that are in the police academy right now. So we have 72 on payroll and 4 in the police academy. And then we have several out on medical leave, injury leave, administrative leave. So we have a few more on the payroll, but it takes quite a while for them to get on the road. So the hiring process starts with somebody taking a written test. Then if they pass that, they come for an interview before us. And then after that, they would be assigned to a selections officer to start going through their background and his personal history. And then after that, they would have to go for a polygraph exam, a psychological exam. They have several interviews to complete before they're considered to be hired. So the process from date of taking the test to when they can actually work alone, if they are hired, is probably close to 18 months. So it's, unfortunately, it just takes that long because there's state required training that they have to do. That's about 7 months at the police academy, and then a minimum of 12 weeks when they come back from the academy and field training with somebody. So that in and of itself is close to 10 months, and the hiring process takes several months also, at least. So, sometimes it's a little less, sometimes it's a little more. So that's the process. That's the process that's been in place for years, and most of it is covered by state requirements because they have to have a certain amount of hours in training before they can work alone. That's required for them to get their certification. So We've been working very closely with Human Resources Department for quite some time now. We have another test, a written test that's being given, that's started already, and there'll be interviews in early May for those people, and we hope to hire people off of that list. But we were kind of struck with two things because recruitment has been very hard in probably many businesses, and definitely in law enforcement for quite a few years now. And our retention problem made it twice as hard for us. So we hope that we have the retention problem fixed now. We don't lose any people that we've hired in the last few years, and that we can continue to get back to a better place and provide the high level of services for I wouldn't say extras, but the things that we want to do. We want to open up these school resource officer positions again, the traffic positions, and a variety of other service positions within the department.
After the Board of Finance meeting, and you said that there were 2 individuals that were going to be interviewed and a potential for 1 lateral. How did those pan out?
So the 2 that we were going to interview were interviewed by the police commissioner, and they hired them. They started the academy the first week of April, I believe it was.
So that's why we went from the 2 to the 4, was those?
Yeah, there's exactly. Yeah, and the other 2 that were already in the academy are supposed to graduate sometime in May.
If these can work. Hi, Chief. Can you just talk briefly about the move from the part-time to full-time social worker? I know that the part-time edition has been great, and what you're hoping to be able to accomplish with a full-time social worker.
Oh, we just want to continue to be able to provide the service to people, but on a full-time basis. There's been I knew there was a need already, and probably everybody in this room did, but the part-time doesn't cover nearly as much work as we anticipated that has come along, and she's been great. But again, she's part-time. She's helped out in many different situations with people with substance issues, with domestic violence cases, homeless people we've had. It's been a really good thing for the town. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, Chief. Thank you. I just want to say I'm a huge advocate of this and a big fan, supporter. So I would love to see over the course of this coming year data, as to how this has impacted your department. And I think next year, if we see anything where, hey, maybe this can grow even further,
I agree.
count me on board.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you, yes.
Thank you.
Chief, for headcount, I saw on your goals and objectives, you'll be, once fully staffed, you'll be looking more towards the promotions and the levels of supervisors.
Yes.
When you look at your roster now, do you think that's something for a retention standpoint you may want to think about earlier, or is it you really need the adequate headcount first?
Well, I want to make sure that we aren't hiring people, getting them in the field, and then losing them to promoted positions. Do I think they're needed? Absolutely. The assistant chiefs and I, and now the newer captain, have been doing a lot of work, but we definitely need to keep the boots on the ground, if you will, as much as we can, because that's where the basic police function is carried out in the field. So it's a balance. Yeah. But we have had many discussions about that. Yep.
How are you? Last year you had 1.1 million for overtime. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what was approved, yes.
And did you go over that this year?
We will. We'll probably be closer to the 1.5.
Okay. That's how many hours of overtime is that? Do you know? I know it's going to vary because
Yeah.
it's different. I mean, you don't have to tell me today. I'm just curious. And on the officers that are in the academy, are they listed as the vacant on here? Their salaries, or are they listed? Are their names in here? already?
They should be in here if they were hired before this was submitted to the first selectman,
Okay.
which was in January.
I know their salaries are going to be just a short month.
Yeah,
for the
so
whole
there's
year, right.
probably 2 that are not on here right now because they started after they started only a few weeks ago.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Umberto? Their salaries are in the budget. There may be, say, vacant, but there's a salary there for them, so they're funded. They might have been reduced somewhat, but there's still a salary in that position. All 82 officers are funded. Right? Some of them were adjusted down a little bit because not knowing whether they'd be hired for the entire year. Right? But there's 82 salaries.
Yes.
I knew that. I just wanted to see if their names were here and they saw all these vacant ones.
Right, like, they were vacant when my budget was done. As the chief said, they were hired after that time.
No, I knew they were probably in here. I just wanted to see.
Yeah.
I want to see if we had 9 vacancies or just 5.
Right now, we're at 10. I'm sorry, I apologize. We're at 8 vacancies now. I apologize.
Does that count in the dispatchers?
No, we have full-time dispatchers. We have 1 part-time dispatcher that is vacant right now.
Okay.
74 officers.
And 74 police officers. I stand corrected.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Okay.
Chief Lombardo, can we switch to talk a little bit about the cars? I know you've requested 5, 4 were approved. How important is that 5th car and to the department, and where do we stand on that?
Well, it's certainly important because we've tried to stay on we've tried to have 5 ordered every year and to try to stay on that pattern, to stay with some form of consistency. And then what we do is you rotate cars off of patrol because we don't want to use them for patrol anymore, whether it's mileage or just repairs are too much. We don't want to use them in that capacity. And then we'll put them you'll see some of the side jobs where the people they have police cars, the officers have police cars. They'll go there, or they'll be used for school car transporting somebody who has to go to training for school. And then eventually they'll be turned over to Public Works for sale. But right now, the fleet is, we had a bit of a transition only because we could not get Fords. We had no idea when they might come in, so we ordered new cars. Maybe the assistant chief might have a few more information about that. He oversees that more directly with one of the lieutenants. But the problem with the cars is, especially if it's a patrol function, which most of the cars are, is that we don't want to use them when they go over a certain mileage or when they're worn to a certain point, or our mechanic tells us we shouldn't because it's just not safe anymore. So we try to keep on those 5 cars every year because eventually we're going to have to catch up somewhere.
A separate one from capital outlay, and this may be for the first selectman. We had a long discussion about the firearms optics, and it was going to be the single $40,000 purchase, and there was $11,000 in the budget, and the Board of Finance had said it would make sense to either ARPA and partially seized funds, or all ARPA, however that was going to work out. The Board of Finance did not remove that $11,000. And so I didn't know if that was going to fully come from ARPA and seized funds. And if not, then I had another question, if that can be shifted into one of the other line items.
Well,
So-
I was going to write a letter to the first selectman asking for the money to come from ARPA, all the $40,000.
So then
Not the 11. 40,000 is the entire department.
Yeah, but the 11,000 wasn't removed from that line item from the
Okay.
capital outlay.
Right.
And so the 11,000 was for this purchase, and then the discussion was, it's only a one-time, let's take it all from ARPA or
Mm-hmm.
use some seized. So I didn't know, since that was in there, and then it goes back to the, which line? To the watch guard. The Board of Finance put $15,000 back into that account to get you closer to what the ask was, but I believe it was the watch guard and the shooting range So you were asking for more like 30,000. So this is a Maria question then, most likely. If that 11,000, if it's going to be all from ARPA, can that 11,000 go into that line item? And maybe,
Under service
Or the-
contracts?
yes.
I'm not sure how it would work, but.
I don't know if you,
it's ARPA
I don't know if you
funding-
can shift it. You didn't get the full ask for that. That's
Right.
what I'm curious,
Well,
so.
we asked for the 11,000 because our thought was, okay, we'll phase it in, so it wasn't as big a hit to the town in 1 year. But I would
Yeah.
love to be able to do the entire department in one.
Well, that
year.
seemed to be the discussion by the Board of
Yes.
Finance.
Yeah.
But then that other portion of the 11,000 didn't get removed.
Okay.
So that's what I'm just,
Yeah,
I don't
I'm
know
not
if that
certain.
can shift in lines or not, so I don't know if the end discussion, maybe the first selectman knows if that was coming from
I'd
ARPA.
have to look at that, Mary, but I believe
The 11 was removed.
It was?
No, the Board of Finance didn't remove the 11.
I thought,
Tasers.
Can I just see that for a second? To refresh my old.
Yeah, it's on page 174, under capital outlay.
The 11,000.
you did remove
You
it?
did remove
Yes.
it.
It says, if you go to the, page 175, you'll see my reductions. It's remove 11,000 for the firearm optics to be funded through the seized property. But when we discussed that, we decided that we were going to take it all take that 11,000 from ARPA, and then the balance between 40 and
You-
11 from ARPA as well.
You are
so that-
right.
So that whole thing will be funded through
Okay,
through ARPA.
perfect. You know what, I missed that was there. I thought the 11,000 was still in, and then the discussion was going to the
It
40,000.
was- I just took it out and said we were going to pay it
Yes,
through the...
through ARPA or
the-
seized.
Well, the seized
Okay.
property, but then the chief just, really didn't want us to take it from that account.
Got it.
So
Okay.
we're going to take it off from...
My
or
fault.
At least, I'm going to recommend to the town council and Board of Finance to take it from ARPA. That will be your decision when that vote comes.
Thank you. I missed that. I thought the 11 was still there, and it was the discussion how it was being funded. Okay, thank you.
So Chief, one of the things, I would say one of the top three issues that pop up when I'm door knocking out there, taxes, Trumbull Town Center, and speeding and people going through traffic signs, stop signs in their neighborhood.
Yep.
So can you just speak to the public here as to how, how you as a department your department addresses that issue, and what is in your budget that addresses that issue?
Sure. So I'll back up a few years when we had 2 officers that were assigned strictly to traffic. That was their full-time job. So they would do traffic enforcement, which is mostly of what you're speaking about. They would move the portable speed signs to different areas that we've had complaints and that we know there are issues with people driving above the speed limit. Because although the portable speed sign doesn't give somebody a ticket, it really does act as a traffic calming device, because everybody, when you see it, I would think, your foot comes off the pedal a little bit, because you're being told right there in your face what your speed is. So we've bought them over the years. We've tried to move them around different locations. We have one on Churchill Road now, one on White Plains Road. We put them on other side streets when we get complaints from people about speeding vehicles in the area. We'll put them in those areas, some of which are school zones. We'll assign people to selective enforcement. We have a list of all of those streets that people have complained about, and it goes to the supervisors at the roll call every day, and they assign people to selective enforcement in those specific areas where they go to, and they work in that area and try to saturate the area to slow people down. And some of it we know, it might be, some people are more concerned because they see it occurring when school lets out or in the morning with commuters and things like that. And the same thing with stop signs. And the same thing with bus stops. Buses stop and cars just go right by it. So we've tried to do more enforcement in all of those areas. With less people working the last few years, it's been a little harder because with less officers, there's less traffic stops. And then when we had to take people out of the traffic unit, that hurt even more, because the traffic unit officers will go out and look at an area, and they'll do some research on what we might be able to do through education or traffic calming devices to slow people down, whether it's an additional stop sign somewhere, which really isn't supposed to be used for slowing people, but the intersection might call for a four-way intersection and it's not. Yeah, but they'll do a variety of things like that. Some people may say, I can't see when I'm pulling out of my street. They'll look at the line of sight to see how far back it really is required or that you would desire for the speed on the road. And then they may ask Public Works to trim back some of the trees or branches that might be sticking out. And so just different things like that to try to make it a little safer for people on the roads.
Just one follow-up. So the protocol for people in a neighborhood to, to get to that point where there's an evaluation
Yeah.
of that area. Do you do that by, just phone calls that come into you or accidents that might occur there? How do you
Well, it's a
hone
combination.
in on
I mean,
that?
the residents in the town will call us, and if they call and they say, listen, I think a stop sign should be here at this location, or the speed limit's too high, I'd like to see it lowered, people are going too fast. You can lower the speed limit to any speed if you get the state to approve it, but it doesn't mean people are going to go that slow, because if the road calls for a certain speed, they're going to go that speed regardless. So you don't want to put something that is just really not uncalled for, but 25 where it's White Plains Road. You wouldn't do that unless it's a school area. So they can call my office, they can send me an email, they can send an email to the police department's general account, and the message gets to our traffic lieutenant, and he will forward it to one of those people who was in traffic to say, okay, the next time you're working, try to go out and take a look at this area. What can we do to change things? What can we do to slow people down? Is it just something we need to educate people? Is it an engineering issue, or is it an enforcement issue? And I can tell you, we get these types of complaints all the time. And I can sympathize with everybody because I see the same things, and it's just, I wish people would slow down, because we've had some really serious accidents where people have gotten hurt seriously or killed, and that's the last thing we want to see happen.
Hi, Chief.
Hi.
Going back to the fifth car, and I don't know if there's a sense of urgency around it. I know that there's a special fund set up that was paid for by overtime. Would you be able to use funding for that? Would you consider using funding for that for the car?
Are you talking about the revenue account that we generate funds
Yes.
through from, like, if an officer's working a job, the town
Yes.
charges them, I believe it's $35 an hour for the car. So the current budget that the first selectman has forwarded is, I believe, 2 from that account and 2 from the regular budget, from a capital line. So we have used it, for the last few years, we've used it to buy some cars.
Come up.
It's up to you.
It's true.
Right? It's okay.
So of the 4 cars, 2 will be paid from that special revenue account, 1 from ARPA and 1 from the budget.
But again, the sense of urgency around the fifth, because we understand that the cars run 24 hours a day.
Yeah, they do, and even idle time is part of the wear and tear on the vehicle. So, yeah, that's why we asked for 5 cars. If I didn't think we needed 5 cars, we wouldn't ask for it. Probably, generally, the standard in the industry is 10%, at least 10% of your fleet should be replaced every year. So we should be getting somewhere 5 to 7 cars a year, the way I look at it.
And we buy the cars, or do we lease?
It's a lease program that the town has for the one that we're going to budget for this year, because one's ARPA and the other 2 from that revenue account. That's paid out by the town over a course of 5 years to pay off the car.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep. Sure.
Are you guys, when you guys go retrofit the cars, are you using the stuff from the old police cars, and are you getting it all new when it comes in?
Yeah,
I know some cars are different.
Yeah.
Or you guys try to get the same cars so you can retrofit them with the stuff if you have to, if it's not broken or whatever.
Yeah, the last few years have been really hard getting the same cars because, well, one, even the models sometimes change a little bit inside. And if in the past, like when we've bought the Ford, I guess they're utilities, but they look like the Explorer. If their interior changes, we would have to buy new equipment for that. If it doesn't change, we just move it from the older car to the newer car. And it depended on the model that we buy. If it's something like some of the cars we're getting this year are not going to be Fords because Ford couldn't give us a time frame as to when they were going to come in. So we were forced to, and we were looking at Tahoes, and we were forced to switch. The only vehicle that we really could get in within a reasonable period of time was the Dodge Durango. So whatever we can use from one car to the next, we will. But sometimes that car will then go from patrol and it'll go to, say, the road jobs. So we don't strip it out. But if it's a car that we're getting rid of, we will strip it. And as a matter of fact, the mechanic has taken parts and different things off the car just to use for other cars. It's kind of cannibalized the cars a little bit to save on parts and so forth.
Any other questions? Thanks, Chief. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, next, we're going to have Public Works. So we'll start with George. George, how are you?
Good evening. Good evening, everyone.
So just for the worksheet, it starts on page 10, and for the blue book on 229.
I'll answer if you have any specific questions, but in general, we normally try to hold our requests to an inflationary markup, unless there is some sort of contractual increase that comes along the way where we'll calculate that into the request. But I'll answer. I don't know if you want to go in any order. I'll answer whatever questions I can.
Sorry. So we have just an agenda. I would say we can open up the floor to any questions. Go ahead.
Hi, George. Thank you. The transfer station. Any news, any updates on where we're at with that?
Transfer station, the DOT has the design in the final review. MetroCog shepherded a meeting between our engineering department, MetroCog, and DOT about 4 or 5 weeks ago. We answered the remaining questions that they had. They had some design questions and a couple of issues with design. So that is something we're anticipating. We have a time frame, Bill? No. It's on DOT time right now. So as soon as that arrives, we will be ready to go to bid. So our hope is to be in construction this summer. Also, by the way, in this year's capital plan, we had budgeted for design to begin the redesign of the flow within the transfer station. So that is something that will be initiated at some point this spring or summer to begin that process of planning the new, that will be from the street in. That's the second phase of improvements there, where we'll have an opportunity to expand recycling and other services that we provide the community.
What was my question? Just trying to come up with something for you, George. No, actually, there was I believe it was Paul Timpanelli had asked about a historical usage of sand and salt in the previous meeting.
Yes,
is that in the works, or?
We provided that to the Board of Finance.
Oh, you did?
Yes, that did go out.
Okay.
I'll make sure that the council also receives that.
Was there
We'll
anything
make sure we
notable?
forward that. I'm sorry?
Was there anything notable?
It's seasonal. So we've had our years where we've had the extreme weather conditions with blizzard in the last 10 years to this past year where we had minimal snow, yet we used a lot of salt because we had a lot of overnight freezing with light precipitation, which actually is worse than being able to just plow. Our roads also are impacted much more heavily with the type of frost heave that we had this year than if we just had a good old-fashioned heavy snowfall winter. So we're out doing the pothole repairs as we speak. That has begun. The plant's opened a few weeks ago. And we do have a piece of equipment coming in that was budgeted for that will, that's within this budget. That will, it's a pothole buster, it's called, and it's a one-man truck. It's a service, and it uses a mix that will adhere to the road permanently. Pretty much the road will deteriorate and that pothole will never deteriorate again. We've seen it in the communities around us the last few years used very effectively. So we're bringing that in. And an example of a place where we plan to go to with that is Daniels Farm Road on those hills. Because when you're the type of traffic, the heavy traffic that you have on that road on a hill with breaks and turns, that really starts to separate the pavement. So that will be one place that you'll see that as soon as that truck's on site.
Hi, George.
Hi.
Let's stay on snow for a second. So when you gave several of the councilmen here the tour of the facilities, you mentioned that town employees, there's certain residential sidewalks that they're required to shovel, and that doesn't happen in other surrounding towns. Just curious about the cost or what suggestions you might have in regards to.
For sidewalks?
Yes.
It's a conversation I've had in the past with council as well as town attorney's office. It would require an ordinance. We do not currently have an ordinance. So it would be establishing an ordinance. That would be something that this body really would ultimately approve. Surrounding towns, the responsibility for a sidewalk is the adjacent property owner. In Trumbull, because there is no ordinance, the town pretty much is responsible for about 25 miles of sidewalk. Which pretty much, we can all do the math, is impossible to clear. So when we run into the patterns with the weather, especially in the winter, we concentrate on school districts first. The crew will first do our public buildings, such as here, the library, police department, all of our public buildings that must open for services. Then they go to the school areas to open up those sidewalks for the pedestrian passage. And then after that, if there's time, they start hitting those commercial, the hills on White Plains Road, Main Street. But in years that it's a really difficult weather pattern, sometimes by the time we're arriving at that a day or so later, we have another weather event and we're just starting back at the beginning. So we never end up hitting some of those areas until late into the season sometimes. And we get help sometimes by warming trend and some rain that may help us along the way. But my strong suggestion would be consideration of a sidewalk ordinance that even if it's that any additional sidewalks going forward in the future, that they would be, you draw a line in the sand and just start somewhere. But the town really should consider that sidewalks should be the responsibility of an adjacent property owner.
Do you, I know it's impossible because weather patterns change every single year, but any estimate as to how much the town might save if the policy was changed?
Because we would have to, our rotation as it stands today, I don't know that we would save a lot of money on the snow removal side of it, but the maintenance side of it is substantial because that could be a couple $100,000 a year, depending on the year and the level of funding that we're able to secure. So It is, I think on the capital side is where the savings are for the town, not so much the operational. Because as I said, we're pretty much with the staffing level that we have in our Parks Department that does the sidewalk cleaning. We hit opening of buildings, schools, and then main commercial areas. And then we're pretty much back to the building shortly after.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oops, sorry. I don't know if you provide it or not, but I love your recycling chart. For the historicals, do you have the breakout of the recycling tonnage? I know it's included, it's one line for recycle versus tipping fee and hauling, which is for the MSW.
I do not have them, but I'll get those for the council.
Okay, I didn't know if you had that. And then any bites on the culvert cleaners? Does it look like that
On
number
the
3 might be the
On the culvert cleaning,
company, yeah?
yes, we actually went out to bid, and a company came back that had serviced the town some years prior, that had done actually a really good job for us. They had high recommendations internally from the department, and they came in at a very good price.
Was it, I know the 105 was discussed?
It's half that,
Really?
yeah.
Okay.
This was one of the 3, didn't you say that, I'm sorry. This was for the basin,
Catch basin cleaning.
catch basin cleaning?
Yes.
And we lost one?
We had a list of 4 from the original bid.
Right.
Then, and they each had been dropping off, and we were left at the end. We were forced. We looked like we were going to be forced to use the highest bidder, which was, I believe, 105.
Wow.
Yeah. So we did very well. We did a bid immediately, and we had a few responses, and we had that one that we qualified. We're really excited they're coming back.
That's a good win.
It gives us opportunity to clean more.
Right.
Are they starting up now? Because I know the money for this year, you weren't able to
Yes.
get to that 1,000.
The purchasing department has been able to process them. We're queuing them up to their schedule. We expect that they'll be in probably in May to begin. So we will be able to use the funds that we have existing, the remaining funds that exist in this year's budget.
Great. And then last thing, streetlight policy. I know we talked about that last year, and it had to come through the town council, but I thought you said you were also working with the town attorneys. So I wasn't sure if that's something that we
It's-
should be looking at or next budget season.
It's something, it's not anything for the budget discussion at this point, but it's the establishment of that policy, I think is important for the town's future. And that is in the town attorney's office.
Thank you.
Just a follow-up to that question. Estimate on cost savings, if you have any recommendations in regards to the light policy?
The light policy, we receive about a dozen requests per year. Some of those requests can have multiple lights. It's really, it's a balance because it's also aesthetically for the town. The character of the town is a rural character. We have a lot of people that have moved from cities to Trumbull in the last 3, 4, 5 years. Totally different perspective on what lights should be in the town. Lights are not for safety, to prevent car break-ins at someone's door. Those are lights that should be placed at the house for security. Lights are for pedestrian safety and vehicular safety. So that's a very difficult conversation with people that are accustomed to neighborhoods where they lived before that just had lights up and down every street. So I'm constantly in that discussion with people. At this time, we do not have a way of limiting that. The only limiting factor is they must fill out applications, and they have to acquire signatures from all of the houses that are immediately affected by a light that may be installed. So, it could be a corner, and that would affect all of the houses on the intersection would have to sign off that they want that light. If there's even one there that says no, then it's disqualified. the same as on a side street or wherever. So there are some controls on it, but it's a matter of placing further controls. Just we need guidance because there's never been a policy, a real council adopted policy. There's been department policy over the years. So it's good practice to have something a little bit stronger.
Understood. Thank you.
George, I have one question. On the pavement preservation program, high level, how are you to date and what is your goal for 24-25?
We used about a third of our funds last year. This year, we will probably use 30 to 40% of the remaining funds, which will leave us with the beginning of the pavement preservation program for next year. We did an extensive, and what I'll do is I'll provide you with the report of the mileage and application for the pavement preservation. It was it was well received and it was very successful. And again, the reminder, it's extending the life of that surface by 6 to 8 years. The first selectman and I were having a conversation just the other day where our director of operations, Rich Infante, is projecting that 7 to 8 years out, we will be in the place where our town roads will be all stable. Because what we're doing is delaying the deterioration through the pavement preservation, allowing us to apply our capital funding for replacement to those really bad streets. We're starting to catch up on the bad streets. Still a lot of work to do, and I don't want to say that we're catching up. I shouldn't even use that term. We're doing well. We're advancing in the right direction. We still have a lot of work to do. But through the pavement preservation, balancing the roads, not allowing them to arrive at a point where people are ringing your phones off the hook because they're falling apart, we're catching up. We're trying to chase the bad ones, and we will arrive in 6, 7, 8 years out at a place where everything is stable, and then it's we expand on the pavement preservation, and we are able to reduce our costs because we have to pave less because we're not behind the gun like we are today.
Hey, George, a couple questions. How are we doing with our garbage tonnage?
Garbage tonnage has been trending lower the last several years. So the tonnages, that's been okay. We have just recently negotiated with the operator of the transfer station for the operations of the transfer station. Those fees are going up a bit, and the MSW, which is down at the burn plant, we had calculated that increased last year. So the tonnage, the disposal cost is what had gone up significantly this past year. And it will continue to tick up. We work as a region. We tried to bid out the disposal as a region. There were, I believe, 7 or 8 communities that are partnered in that, and we only received a response from our existing company. They have a lock on that right now. There is technology that's being permitted in Milford that has it's a new plant that has tremendous separation and recycling capacity within it that reduces what actually has to be disposed of in a burn plant. So that won't come online, even if permitted, for another probably 5 to 8 years. But once that arrives, that'll be a game changer because then the monopoly will be broken because right now in this state, they've closed several facilities, so we just don't have options. So when we bid it, we just get the one person that comes back. Stanford is sending their garbage by rail to Pennsylvania. So that, just to put it in perspective.
Oh, George, one more question. Can you review maintenance, repair equipment building. It was a 50,000 increase. What is? can you
The
review that?
$50,000 increase?
Yeah, just review
Yes.
what
Yep.
that stuff's for.
Absolutely. We will be before you probably next month. We'll be before the Board of Finance and then the council, looking at a special appropriation, because that account, the difficulty with it, it's very similar to snow removal. You go into a fiscal year with a plan. These are the things that we're going to address because you're planning for repair or replacement of something that's near end life. And then along the way, you have the surprises of a boiler that gives up, an air handler on a roof, an electrical system that burns out. So each year, we're arriving at, unfortunately, exceeding what we have budgeted. And that's where we had requested additional, just to try to offset some of those unanticipated expenses that we're running into on a regular basis in pretty much in every building. And we weren't exactly helped in that department by the recent visits by OSHA that pointed out a lot of shortcomings in most of our buildings. So those things are being addressed also. So those are capital, those are pretty much operational expenses also. A lot of electrical there.
So I know this is one thing that they talked about at the Board of Finance. We're over, and you're saying that now because you're going to be
Yes.
coming back to us. Do you have any sense of how far over you're probably going to end up being? Do you have any projection on this? Just so we can compare it to what this 50,000 is going to actually help you.
I believe it's probably going to be in that $50,000 range, 50 to 60,000.
Which would bring you up to about 260. Well, no, they were at.
I would think more.
No, I mean that's from the first selectman I'm talking about.
PD is eat up like $30,000
Year to date is at 269. Okay.
Yeah, Dimitri, who oversees our building maintenance, he just reminded me, we have, beyond what I was thinking about, we have an RTU unit over at the police department that has failed, that we just received proposals for $30,000, just that unit. So those are the type of things that we run into because our aging infrastructure, our buildings are old. In this building, that's why I brought to you the plan for the comprehensive renovation of the HVAC system in this building that we're doing incrementally. We had it designed up front. Next month, they come in and they replace all of the rooftop infrastructure on this building. That's the second phase. And there are 3 more phases after that. So it's unanticipated what we face with this account. So it's difficult for me to even give you a projection because we just don't know. Just like this $30,000 unit just went, we have no clue what else may be looming.
Right, but if you're already at like 270 for this year, and you're thinking you're going to be probably another 50, that's going to bring you probably up to about where you would be if we keep this 50,000 in
This
here and increase,
50,000 will
right?
certainly
That would
help.
end up at about 320, 330.
My gut feeling is that we're going to end up a little bit north of that, unfortunately. Yeah, we're about to go into our transition from heating to cooling. That's when we always find our problems, and you can't find that until you turn everything on.
I mean, in the switchover, you mean?
So the switchover every year, every building has challenges on the switchover.
George, how didn't we just fix the police department? How old is that unit that just broke?
Is that?
Just a curiosity question.
Hi, everybody. There's definitely some misunderstandings about what work has actually been performed over at PD. So we have done a lot of HVAC work, but they're in different components of the overall building. So the greatest amount of the stuff that you're familiar with is probably the range. There's a great deal of super HEPA filters just to deal with all of those issues, the first floor. But there's some significant areas of the police department that hasn't worked at all. It still has electric heaters on the walls that haven't worked in years, especially in the officer areas on the second floor. So that building has a lot of challenges. It is not a complete building redo for HVAC by any stretch of the imagination. Sorry. But really, the challenges that George was talking about is my biggest expense right now is just running around with duct tape, holding things back together again, because it's always at a state of failure in pretty much all of our buildings, from the senior center, PD, this building. It's a challenge.
Good, Rich.
Just because I saw the word came up pretty quickly, the leaf pickup, you guys do a fantastic job. I know part of the reason why we do it is to protect the catch basins. Just wanted to get a quick update on the catch basins. And make sure that I think on the finance meeting, you said that you're reducing the budget from 20,000 to 10,000, and do you foresee that being a problem for the catch basins in the future?
We were fortunate enough, I mentioned a little earlier that we were able to bid the services recently, and the bids came back very, very competitively. So we will not be reducing the number of catch basins we were cleaning before. We should be about even. We were pleasantly surprised when we went out for that bid.
Thank you.
And that plays into the Clean Water Act and all of those other regulatory requirements. So we have to demonstrate that we're cleaning catch basins a certain percentage per year. So that's why we are vigilant on that.
So when OSHA, how does that work? How does OSHA, do they do an annual check? Do they do a pop-up check like a health department does? How do they monitor?
We're here. See you for the next season.
I was asking.
It was when we went up to Weathersfield and we met with them after for a post-meeting, and it's basically the launch of the real setting a calendar for requirements of when things have to be completed by. They shared with us that they're on a rotation with municipalities of 6 to 8 years. So it was just that our turn had come around. It's not that they're pulling names out of a hat. They do, on a rotating basis, they hit a certain amount of communities per year. And to be fair, it's public safety. It's our not just our workforce, our team. It's the visitors to buildings. So it all is necessary. As frustrating as it is that you have to incur the additional expenses, it's never a good time to incur those expenses. They're all necessary things that really should happen. A lot of it is training.
And do you have a certain period of time that
Yes.
things need to be implemented by once they?
We have an extensive document, area by area, with what the remediation needs to be and when it needs to be completed by. And when we went up to Weathersfield, they worked with us tremendously. They were excellent. We really appreciate everything that they actually did. The initial fines were almost $26,000. They had discounted that by $6,000 because we were so aggressive at working alongside them as they were here. Before they left the town, we had corrected numerous things that had been recognized as shortcomings. We were fixing it behind them, and then when they left with the full report of everything that we had taken care of. They recognized we took it serious. We went up, we negotiated with them on times. Just some of them we were saying we're going to need a little bit more time on that just because we have to bring someone in with expertise. Long story short, some of them are extended out to August, which is pretty far out. And that's, I don't think we would have received that type of treatment if it wasn't that they knew that we took very seriously what the work that we were doing together. That day before we left, they reduced it by another $10,000. So our total fine is, I think, somewhere around 9,000, I believe, about 9,000. So we couldn't thank them more. You know, they recognize, we appreciate the efforts. We don't take it as an affront or challenging what they're telling us. We recognize these are things that are necessary.
Hey, George, that's one of my favorite project. Where are we at with that?
Bid for Unity.
We're waiting for Kevin to post a bid.
Yeah. Everything is into purchasing. We're getting ready to post that bid. So it's imminent. Yes, absolutely. The work will most likely we'll try to schedule that towards when it's drier conditions, because we're working in some of the waterways. So it's after baseball season and everything. It's probably mid to late July into August when you'll see that kind of work there, because we'll be working in the water.
Thanks.
And the park will be quieter at that point too.
Good. Okay. Then move to Recreation and Parks. Dimitri? So for the book, it starts on page 393, and for the worksheet, 17 and 18. We have any questions so far?
Greetings again.
Greetings. Good to see you.
Yeah, if there's any questions, it's always easier for me to field those, or else I can play whatever way you want to go.
Just a small one. On the travel camp, what is the cost? Is that, and I was looking online today, I wasn't sure which area that was. Is that, or it was like, oh, sorry.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Noreen.
So travel camp is listed separately. It's underneath travel camp because you don't get the sibling discount. So it's not listed underneath the rest of the summer camps.
Okay.
Because the reason behind that there's no discount is because we don't get a discount on the tickets for the different amusements that we visit. So if I'm remembering correctly, I believe it's $250 per week for travel camp. It's $175 for our playground camp and for junior camp. But again, that $175 does get discounted if you have the multi-sibling discount.
And are we charging non-residents more?
Yes, $20 more.
Okay. And then is it a large bus that's transporting? I don't know how many kids are in
So
that.
we have a maximum capacity because of the fire codes at the facilities that we use as our home bases. So we have a maximum capacity of 75 campers at both playground sites and at travel camp. So we do utilize 2 full-size school buses for those trips. And then at junior camp, unfortunately, or fortunately, because I love that we're at TechAC now, we do utilize 2 of the preschool rooms down at TechAC, which unfortunately lowered our capacity from 40 to 30. But again, that facility is wonderful, and I will never complain about that. I'm okay with us having 30 kids.
So that's why the transportation, so you have to use the full-size bus, and that's why
Yes.
transportation was so
Yeah,
much.
because you also have to take into account, so it's 75 kids plus a minimum of 1-to-10 ratio with the staff. So you have a minimum of 8
Adding on.
staff. Plus then we have our site supervisor who sometimes takes the bus, sometimes they drive. It all depends on where we're going. I try and have, oh God, see, I need to knock on wood before I say this. I try and have the site supervisors drive themselves if we're going to someplace that's a little bit more extreme where there might be an injury that we require hospitalization for. Unfortunately, it has happened at multiple of the more extreme facilities. These kids are going, rock climbing. They're going to Brownstone. They're going to Powder Ridge. So unfortunately, we have had a couple of kids need stitches and things like that, where I don't want anybody's child to go in an ambulance alone. So when we go on those types of trips, I try and send them in their own vehicle. That way, if anybody does need to be transported, they have somebody to go with them. And then I go and I get the staff member and I drive them back to their car.
Thank you.
I'll stay up here for now.
Oh, and the buses themselves have significantly increased in cost.
I was asking.
Yeah, year by year. The bus itself is
Yeah.
a big driver for all of that. But we felt that we had a good response, and we're quite successful in going to more travel camp type offerings than our traditional go to the school playground camp. So go with what works.
Hey, Dimitri.
Hey,
So I had no way. First of all, the turf's coming along nicely. Love it.
Thanks.
Can't wait to see the finished project. Great job. That said, I had no idea that amongst other things that you do in the town, that you're also in charge of the community theater. So I know that on the Board of Finance call, you were looking for 25,000 more in funds. So I just wanted you to speak a little to the community theater.
Are we talking about, I'm sorry, so there's two separate asks for about that much. So are we discussing the seasonal line, or are we discussing the salaries? Because it's about the same, correct?
And it's in both.
Is that the winter that they were talking about on the?
I'll let Vicky take this.
Let-
Because they're all about the same amount.
So, yeah, just to clarify, are you speaking about the 25,000 that was added to the
Yes.
that budget line? Yes, so that was my suggestion to add that funding.
Okay. I know you also, I think it was you who mentioned on the call that there was a loss of $7,700. Is that because we didn't charge enough in tickets? Or how does it, walk me through the process?
It's only the first year that this
Right.
that the community theater produced a show, so I wouldn't want to say they lost money. They actually, in 3 days, had ticket sales of over $73,000.
Okay.
Which is pretty remarkable for a first-time production. So if you will remember, we did put some money from ARPA into the community theater as seed money.
35,000?
35,000, right. There's still some money left in that seed account for the next production, which we just had a meeting about that today. So that production will be again in December. So in order to make sure this, stays afloat until we would hope it will become self-funding, but you never can tell. Right?
Understood. There's startup cost every year.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know what? I mean, this is a community event. It certainly was a very popular production this last year. We would hope that it will continue to be so. And so that's I suggested we put 25,000 more in just to make sure that we cover the expenses should it, for whatever reason, not be as successful. I don't predict that that's going to happen, but it's like the snow, you never know.
Sure.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Understood. Thank you.
Okay.
Hey, Dimitri. Do we have a new tree warden?
Hi, how are you? I'm him.
Oh, you're the tree warden.
And in
I know how
fact-
much you love trees.
I do. I actually do.
Yeah, I see.
Occasionally I have to cut them down, though, Tony.
So, the salaries went from 48 to 60?
Are we speaking about the deputy tree wardens?
No, it just says salaries part-time permanent. Yeah, I
Yes.
guess. So who's the part-time tree warden?
So we have hired 2 deputy tree wardens to pick up some of the legwork that Dimitri can't do. How do I explain all of the different aspects of this other than to bore you with it? Every tree that it's called in, whether it's through an email, a phone call, has to be inspected. So we get dozens and dozens of these things every single week. On top of that, whenever there's the enhanced tree program from the utility companies, they will give us documents this thick with corridors that they might be pursuing taking trees down. Every one of those trees is inspected by our staff for viability and to discuss with them what other options there may be. Sometimes there is no option, but we believe that the town has made it very clear that we want to preserve as much of our urban forest as we possibly can. The only way to do that practically is to actually put your hands on it, and it's a boots on the ground kind of operation. So we have to look at it, and we need the personnel to be able to do it. On top of that, every one of our takedowns, pruning operations, or otherwise also has a follow-up and people that are present at least as the startup of every one of those initiatives. We're taking this tree down. We're absolutely sure that we're only taking that leader, not the entire tree. So it's putting people where we need them to get the best possible outcome.
So when the utility company strip-minded Unity Park and then up the hill, you guys checked all those trees?
I wasn't the tree warden then.
Because they just scorched earthed everything.
I'm very familiar with what they did there, and I was never happy with it. And in that particular instance, the utility company and the Pura rules overrode anything that anybody was going to do. That was a joke about me not being the tree warden. There are some things you just have absolutely no pushback down. Their dimensions of where they will cut just unilaterally cannot be negotiated with. We're just doing this. I saw prime trees that would never reach a power line within 80 feet that they felt were a threat because it existed within that circumference that they designated. On the other hand, what you do with the utility companies on the back end is negotiate with them for some kind of remediation. What will be replanted? Something that can be added back to the town. So it's not all for loss, but they are very aggressive, and I don't think anybody's particularly happy with the way that they implement that program.
Well, they, meaning the utility company,
Yes.
had made promises to the people over there that they're going to replant some of those trees. Do you know about that?
I do. One of the neighbors we met with recently, and they were supposed to be coming back, and I think it was another half a dozen cedars and some lost hydrangeas that they had originally planted there, and they were going to fortify the border along his property. And as a matter of fact, they're still on the hook to the town for dozens of trees. Well, they've killed everything. I mean, they did it 2 times in a row. You know that property. When they did the first along the waterway, that was worse than the second time. In my opinion, that was devastating. The water issues are going to be very much so, and really where he was having the greater problems, one of the culverts was actually clogged, causing it to top.
I found out from one of the neighbors, okay? Did you know that the town built that waterway in the back, the backhoe?
Mm-hmm.
Did you know that?
I've been here a long time, yes.
He told me that the other day.
Well, most of what you see in Lower Unity is a creation by the town, in much the same way as Twin Brooks, Island Brook, Indian Ledge. Almost every park that we have activities in at this point actually were greatly self-performed. That's something I actually take some pride in. Not many towns can develop a park system off of their own efforts, but it doesn't mean that there aren't things that can be done better.
Last question. Are you the one to follow up with the trees for the utility company? Oh, you're gonna, okay. Are they supposed to put trees on that hill too?
They won't.
They won't.
No.
Just on those people's property?
Yeah, the path of Godzilla there is just sacrosanct. They will let nothing encroach upon it. If you notice, the trees that we had planted in Unity after the first incursion, I had to move the greater majority of them when they came back this time because they were planning on cutting them all down. We planted to try to get some screening for the Bayberry residents, and we did. But we were within, 6 feet of their designated area, and they red flagged every one of them. I'm like, so what are you doing here? We're cutting them down. I'm like, no, you're not. So we transplanted them all. Yeah, you bet. Hey.
Hey, Dimitri, thank you. Where are we at with, if we were to compare last year's online request system, right? All the requests that come in for you to go out and check on trees. Are we still seeing the same volume of requests?
It fluctuates. We're right at the next period where we're going to see an uptick. You know, if somebody sees a barren tree in the middle of winter, it really doesn't give anybody pause. Now, if a branch doesn't have a leaf on it, they start to get nervous, and so they call all those in. Not every one of those calls results in any kind of work. It just
Right.
requires us to go out and see it. In terms of things that generate costs, we've certainly, I think, held the line rather well. I think that we're being very, very cautious, and we're trying to, educate people where they can.
I feel like COVID was a big, remember,
Oh,
it was
sure.
like everybody was home, everybody was wanting to do their property.
Yep.
Are you seeing a drop-off?
Well, you're seeing a leveling off, but see, it's not a clear pattern like that. So, one of the things that happens is, on one hand, people are more educated and are not so quick to react. On the other hand, the trees are also a year older, and every year a tree gets older, it generates more likelihood of some kind of failure. Not necessarily a takedown, but some kind of failure that again would drive some cost by our services.
I will just say this, Dimitri, real quick. You definitely have been doing a better job the last couple of few years in terms of the budgets, in terms of the trees, and so I want to give you some kudos for getting a handle on that.
I have to say that it is true. If there is anything that I've been involved with that is a team effort, it is dealing with the trees. George, our comptroller, we're constantly on it. We're looking at the budgets. We're constantly getting information out. My assistant Matthew is tireless, returning phone calls, and we currently only have one of the deputies working. They're out 3 and 4 times, a week, knocking on doors and getting people the necessary information, so they're not panicking. That's the most important thing to us. If we have an emergency, and we've had a couple, it really doesn't matter. I like to think of ourselves as firemen in that moment. I don't care. We're taking care of this. The rest of the time, we're going to take a moment to try to educate you and, let you know that this isn't about to destroy your house in 15 minutes. We have a little bit of time, and we have some other methods that we can employ right now, which may be more cost-saving to the town and not putting you, the homeowner, at risk. So, thank you.
Hey, Dimitri. For Twin Brooks, see some posts here and there, especially when it rains, that Twin Brooks is closed because of flooding.
Mhm.
And now that we know that, or at least believe that the farmers market will be going there, do we see any risk with parking, access? Like, this seems like forgive the pun, a perfect storm.
The perfect storm. So what would you like me to specifically address? If we're going to be selling apples and scuba gear in Twin
So I guess my
Brooks?
first question is, are we confident that we will have people will have access to Twin Brooks, given the flooding that at least the few.
Yes. So in short, Twin Brooks is a floodplain. If anybody knows what Twin Brooks is, then you know what that means. It works like a giant fishbowl. Every time that it rains, it collects water from everywhere and then slowly releases it outward in a controlled manner. That's a benefit to this community in a lot of different ways. If you also know, all joking aside, we've had some of the highest rainfalls in the last 2 months on record. So let me say highest rainfalls in floodplain, and guess what happens? There's water in Twin Brooks. On the positive side, Twin Brooks overall isn't being decimated by water. So in years past, prior to a lot of the work there, the roads would be literally washed away. The number of the reservoirs would be filled in from debris from the hills, from the adjacent reservoirs. That was the work that really was intended to help stabilize and preserve Twin Brooks so that it wasn't going to get washed away. Is there still areas, are there still areas in Twin Brooks that need some minor landscape adjustment to sheet drain a little bit better off of a walkway? Absolutely. Are there some structural things that we are planning on doing to alleviate some of the spillover areas? Absolutely. But any time thus far that we've closed Twin Brooks to the public, in that, I'll just call it a causeway where the water actually crosses over from Pond 2 to Pond 1. They all have numbers. If it's at a certain depth, it is possible that someone could walk through that. You know, it's not like 6 feet high, it's 3 inches high, but with force. And it could take the legs out from somebody. So early on, we wanted to err on caution, not allowing people access to the entire park. We're not seeing the high volume, even though we're seeing a lot of water, and there's always water trickling over that area. But we are going to implement other ways of keeping that area safe, redirecting people either around the pond so that they can get to other areas of the park safely. Back to the farmers market, I tend to drift. That is the only area that we're actually experiencing what people are calling flooding. It's right across that causeway. The area that we've selected for the farmers market is the grand field to the left. That's actually higher than any of the other areas that would traditionally flood in a weather event. If we have some outlandish amount of water, I've seen 13 feet of water in Twin Brooks. I've seen water practically to White Plains Road. That, I think the farmers market's going to get canceled that week, but that is by no means the norm, and that's not what we're experiencing there. So from where we stand, we're going to manage the farmers market. We're very optimistic that this is going to be a good fit for the park. But I think it's as good a time as any to say there really weren't a lot of other choices for the continuation of the farmers market anywhere, to be perfectly honest. One of the other park alternatives would have been Unity, because, well, it can flood as well, but not in the same way. Well, we're anticipating ripping up the roads in Lower Unity this year. So imagine if we're going to put it in Unity and we literally, destroy the area that they're going to be working in. That wasn't an option. Every other park that we have is essentially an athletic facility. It's like, as much as I am all in on the farmers market, I'm not trading off baseball and soccer for selling cantaloupes. I'll get crucified. So I can't shut down those parks for that type of an event. It was Twin Brooks or the farmers market was going to have to, have a small delay in whether or not it was going to open. We think we can manage it. Most of the people that we're speaking to are very optimistic. The farmers and the local produce vendors are excited about some of the changes that we've made. Cross our fingers all the way around that we have another positive thing in Trumbull. Hope that wasn't too much of a pitch.
Dimitri, is the town running the whole organization of this, or are you guys working with the NIA still? Or what actually transpired?
So, well, the NIA essentially was having some difficulty in getting volunteers to run the farmers market in its previous location. The previous market master, you have to have a market master to run a farmer's market, reached out to me on a whim and asked, would the town be interested, almost with a laugh, taking this on because they were not going to do it any longer. They couldn't do it. We were thinking about actually having a small 3 or 4 vendor type
open air market.
An open air market here at Town Hall. Thank you. To coincide with our Sunday concerts. Wanted to, people are here, they can grab some cookies or whatever, and that was rattling around in our thinking, in our programming before anybody reached out. And then they said, hey, it's going to stop. What do you think? We sat down, rolled up our sleeves, and we concocted a number of different scenarios as to whether or not we can make this work. And this is how we got to where we are, scuba gear and all. You bet.
All right. Thank you, Dimitri. We'll move to Trumbull Day. Kathy?
Good evening, everybody. You can't put any money back in, so I'll answer any questions you have, but you took all my money, so it's gone. We're okay, though. We're okay. Our biggest problem is we don't have the Stratford stage anymore. We used to just borrow it. It is not roadworthy. It is not workable. It scared me to open and close it, but it's now 10 to 12 grand each year to rent a stage. So I may be back next year asking for my money back.
That was easy. Thank you.
All right. June 1st, we will have our volunteer portion up on the website, so it would be nice to see a lot of people volunteering to help. It really is easy work. So it's and it's fun to talk to everybody and watch everybody. So hopefully you all sign up. Thanks.
And you do an awesome job. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to drive the cart.
You what?
I want to drive the cart instead of wash.
Well, you know, Rotary's not involved anymore, so Joe, Preston, Dana, they won't be driving carts. No, the three of them were on the commission, and all three of them resigned, so it's fine. We're good.
Good. It looks like we've completed the agenda for today. Our next meeting will be Thursday at 7 p.m. We'll be chatting with Human Resources, Elections, Finance Department. I don't believe Mary Sherlock Center will have her, I think she's on vacation, and Board of Ed. So until then, see you all on Thursday. Thank you.